Welcome to the Alchemy Experience podcast, where transformation isn't just talked about, it's lived. I'm Erin, and around here, we're turning breakdowns into breakthroughs, pain into power, and survival into serious thriving. Whether I'm flying solo or vibing with a badass guest, we dive into all the things on health, creating beautiful relationships, and building wealth. We're keeping it real, raw, and ridiculously empowering. It gets a little juicy, a little bit wild, and super inspiring. This isn't just another podcast, it's your permission slip to evolve loud, proud, and on purpose. Let's go light the world on fire. Well, welcome back, everybody, to the Alchemy Experience podcast. I have Sabrina with me today, and I feel like we're long lost souls that the universe brought us together recently, which is so wild because her and I were chatting for a few minutes, but really. I think it's all about timing, and we're both in a space where it was like the right time to connect. And so I love this so much. I am so excited to dive in with you. You are you've hosted podcasts, you have been a speaker, you're a teacher at heart, and you coach and support women in their alchemizing, and which is so aligned and so amazing with what I do. And I feel like, again, we could probably sit here all day and just chit chat, but tell the peeps on my side of the world what you do. And, because that was like literally the smallest little bio. So, from your words, who are you? What do you do? Let's dive
Yeah,
in.
absolutely. Thank you so much. So, funny enough, the first thing I want to say is just mentioning alchemy, because I really think was the word that connected us. And what I do know about alchemy is they say there's two paths. There's like the path of like theory and studying it. And then there's the path of like literally the universe just like throwing you into alchemy. And I think that's the path that we're on. And I do believe that when we're on that path, like you said, it's all about timing and just symbols and words connecting alchemists when it's time to meet. So I think it's incredible. So I'm a trauma informed emotional intelligence coach. That is my jam, emotional intimacy, supporting women with feeling safe with their big emotions and processing them, but especially learning how to be empowered in their vulnerability and creating that in their relationships and their business. So really going profoundly into how do we alchemize emotions to empower us rather than feel burdened and overwhelmed or ashamed. Because I think most of us, because of our childhood upbringing, where there was no mental health awareness, I don't even think the word emotional intelligence was coined yet.
Mhm.
Most of us learned that emotions are not safe, they're not welcomed. And so that is mostly what I do. And my academy, very closely to what you do, is called the Emotional Alchemy Academy. And it's really focused on reclaiming our emotional authority and becoming a leader. Mostly, I attract empathic leaders, but leaders who really want to lead from there. Like, how can we connect from the human perspective? But that's not just like, I feel empathy and emotions and I'm overwhelmed by my environment. It's like, how do I now show up in my rage, in my jealousy, in my resentment, whatever it is, and how do I alchemize that for power? So that's a little bit of what I do.
I love it so much. So much alignment and similar things that we do and sort of the women we work with, but I think there's a different little bit of style, right? Which is so cool. And I think what is really beautiful is that I have been a part of groups or, you know, um, even just relationships in general, like friendships or connections that I might have had that felt we were doing very similar things, but there felt like a almost competitive nature. And I don't, that is something I'm really trying to change the culture of women around that, right? Is that we can be doing the same things, but there's 8 billion people in the world, right? Like I cannot handle all of that. You cannot handle all of that. We need each other. And if we're doing similar work, but we have our own little edge, there's enough to go around for people, right? So I love that we're connecting. We can support each other on this journey. We understand the depth of it. So I think it's so cool that we're sitting here talking about doing the same thing, but we're like, let's lift each other up and let's collaborate and let's connect and let's alchemize to higher level, not just be down here and be like, well, I don't want to connect with you because you're doing the same thing, which I've run into. And so when we started, I reached out to you because we're in a group together and I was like, I saw a post of yours or I saw you somehow in the group and I'm like, oh my gosh, Alchemy, she's doing the same thing. Like what a cool connection. And then we got to chatting, voice messaging and I'm like, oh my gosh, we're so much alike. What a great opportunity because not everybody understands what we do and not everybody gets it. And sometimes it can feel lonely or discouraging as a business owner, especially in the work we do, because we hold a lot of
Yes.
space for people. So I'm so grateful for the connection and tell my folks a little bit more about how you landed in this role. Because you're a teacher at heart, right? So we were talking sort of about your journey, but give us sort of how you arrived to being this trauma-informed coach.
Okay, absolutely. I will do my best to give a short version.
It's all good.
I think it's kind of like a two-way path between my professional life, starting off as a teacher, but also my personal life and struggling with addiction on a personal level. And what I want to say is when I was a child, my parents divorced when I was very young. And I took it like my entire world fell apart. Like the safety net was like pulled from underneath me. And
Yeah.
of course, I'm seeing this in hindsight. Like as a child, I did not understand that. But I went from being a joyful, happy, energetic, like ball of joy to being like so sensitive and anxious and crying. And I felt so misunderstood. And of course, in the 90s, the language was don't cry, you'll be fine, don't be anxious, like kind of like, like just stop. And so, very young, I think I learned to internalize. Like, there's kids who externalize, and those are usually the kids we see with like behavioral issues or, but I was the kid who internalized and learned to mask very, very young. And by the time I was in high school, that ended up, turning into anger, a lot of anger and resentment. And unfortunately, my parents did not have, the education or the tools to understand that I probably needed therapy. And instead, I turned to drinking very young and using drugs. And fortunately, for some reason, school was my anchor.
Mm,
So in school, I had like teachers who took me under their wing
mm,
and I excelled at school. And school was where my genius thrived. So I was just naturally a student who loved learning and who excelled. And so even though I was having these emotional troubles, school was kind of like that landing platform. And that kept guiding me back to, okay, academics. So I would kind of have these moments where I would stop escaping, in substances and I would refocus on school. And somehow that chaos would not impact school.
mhm.
So as time went on, I kind of went through these ebbs and flows like that. And I ended up, going to McGill, studied a Bachelor of Education. And I'm sure my teachers in high school influenced that unconsciously.
Yeah.
And my idea was like, I am going to be that person who allows students to have a happy life. Like I viewed the purpose of education is to be happy. And I was very like naive, like I'm going to be the best teacher who makes kids happy and it's going to be so great. And my first year of teaching was the most difficult year of my life. It was like reality popped, administrators throwing you under the bus, parents always criticizing you, accusing you of every possible thing. My first day of teaching, I was told that I was encouraging the kids to bully each other. And I was like, what? Like, where is this coming from? They're like, my kid got hit and you didn't see it and da 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 da. And so reality hit. And
Mhm.
what I saw was that, and this was a context, this was in Toronto, and it was a private school where parents are paying like 30,000 a year. And these kids who were 3 to 4 years old, because I started with kindergarten, were anxious, had communication issues, would like have huge emotional upsets. I just saw it was like being able to plan, assess, and teach was not going to cut it. So within a year, I decided to go back to school and I did my Master of Education in Developmental Psychology. And I thought that I would study essentially like ADHD and kind of like more the academic side.
Hmm.
And I realized like, no, that's not what I'm passionate about. It's the social emotional side that has me be passionate. And of course, at that point in my career, when I was essentially in like the second year of my master's, I had kind of gone back to drug abuse and alcohol. And it was kind of a way to cope with the demands of being a teacher and also always feeling unfulfilled in my personal romantic relationships. And I was just kind of like this really high functioning addict.
Hmm.
Like I would use on the weekend and be like this super successful teacher and, doing my master's in the week. There's so many other side notes, but I'm like, I'm going to stay focused. And essentially, throughout my master's, I discovered so much about myself.
Hmm.
And I realized I had trauma and I decided to take a break. And I actually went to CAMH, which is a mental health space and addiction space for that's open to the public in Toronto. And I realized I had complex PTSD. And I came to terms with trauma that I had lived that I did not know was trauma. And I learned that there was a huge correlation between mental health and addiction.
Hmm.
And so I was able to actually be sober and get the support that I needed and go back to full time work, continue my master's. And that's where I discovered mindful compassion, trauma informed care. I learned about healing mood disorders through art therapy, through sand therapy, play. So, all of these kind of like alternative modalities. I'm getting like shivers as I'm saying this. And I actually started to integrate this into my classroom. And I also became a Reiki teacher at that time. And I also started to learn more about energy and things like that. So that's kind of how I leaned more into the holistic path. And it was always about embedding it into my own life and my career. But
Amazing.
what I found was that there was still something off. Like I kept seeing, wait a second, you're a teacher. Academic is really what's in your contract, but that's not what you want. I don't want to teach math. I don't want to teach English. I want to teach social emotional learning. And unfortunately, those roles just didn't exist yet. Or there was always someone with a little bit more seniority that was getting, the specialist role.
Hmm.
So 7 years into it, I decided to leave. And I did what everyone thought was completely crazy. I left the cushion, pension, that whole thing. And I decided to start a spiritual coaching business. And long story short, in 2022, I found myself in Mexico. I'm originally from Canada, went to Mexico, and someone lent me this book called The Alchemist. And they're like, I think this is the perfect book for you. And all of the dots started connecting. And next thing I knew, I unconsciously registered for a business program called the Alchemy Room. And this is where I discovered that like emotional intelligence, like I actually saw, I was like, oh, emotional intelligence is my jam. And somehow through that, the Emotional Alchemy Academy, you know, was birthed.
True.
And I focused a lot more on coaching and emotional intelligence. And that's really, it was just like a personal career path. And every time I tried to almost like go in another direction, I'm brought back to alchemy.
Hmm.
So that's the short, long story.
I love it. I love it. It is so different yet similar to my experience, which we had talked about, prior to recording here, but just sort of this like there's something deeper, there's something more. And I think what's beautiful is we both understand the term alchemy, we both embody it in way of it's not just the logical, it's the energetic piece that a lot of people are missing and that our world really needs right now is not the woo-ness of like, yes, just breathing, yes, doing the like 8 part centering and all of that. Yet, like, yes, that is necessary when you're at your like highest alignment, right? But like, it's how do we get there? That's the process, right? Like, for those that are listening to this, whenever it is and wherever you are, if you're in a space where you're like, I feel like there's just something where I feel stuck. And that is what it is. It's that we're operating so much in the logical, we're operating so much in what's my next best step, which, yes, that's important in, relationships, in business, in career, in being a mom, and, being a teacher, all those things. Like, what's the next best step in how I'm going to teach these kids, right? But also, if we're not doing it from an energetic place of feeling grounded, our clarity
Mhm.
isn't there. And we're going to start making decisions from a place of survival and not from a place of peace and contentment and clarity, So I think it's so interesting that you've had these moments of like clarity. And then when it got to a level where you were about to level up, it's like, oh, like addiction happened again. And then like you got back in, right? It's like each time we're expanding, our like ego brings us back down into this place of like, this is too scary to evolve. And so it's really cool to see like how you've evolved through that and how you found your own alchemizing way, which is really cool. And I think we're both doing that for other people. We're holding space to help them find that for themselves, which we need more of. So I love it.
Yeah. And when you say that, what comes to mind is I think what happens is when we get into the world of energy, a lot of people then get too lost in the energy and in the spiritual work. And it's what I've seen is then people start to escape looking for an energetic high.
Yes.
And, I used to be a Reiki teacher and I've taught level 1 and 2 students. And what I found was that I had to stop because it no longer felt responsible. People were coming to me seeking more spiritual highs when I was like, no, you actually now need grounded work. You might actually need to go to therapy. You might actually need to address the trauma, the dysregulation in your nervous system. But at that time, I didn't have quite the language or the ability yet to understand that. But I just knew it's not responsible anymore to lead people on that path when that's all they've been seeking. And I think there's a place where we find the balance. It's like, now, how do I bring the world of, let's say, developmental psychology and somatics and nervous system regulation with the energy work and the spiritual work? And I think in general now, women have been bringing that together. And what I love about alchemy is I think it's this like, it's a beautiful concept that brings the two together because alchemy can be alchemizing, rage into art. It
Mhm.
can also be sadness, like the energetics of sadness becoming a piece of poetry.
Yes.
And so I view it as like we're turning the energetics and actually bringing it into 3D reality. And it can be so grounding instead of kind of being like lost and dissociated and or just in the cognitive, like you said.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that blend, right?
Yeah.
We're creating something from nothing. And so that is really the magic, right? That we're able to bring out in people. And I love that we intuitively have that thing that some don't. And that's okay because we need people that have their own gift. But then what is important is we can step into ours. And so I think you're doing that. And it's just so beautiful to see. I'm excited to continue to connect with you and collab with you and just like hear what you have going and see how you grow and, potentially send people your way. So, with that said, if somebody is vibing with you and is like, oh, I like this girl's connection and spirit, where's the best place for them to find you? Where do you hang out?
Yeah. Okay. So I would say Instagram is where I always am. So it's just I am Sabrina Mabel. And if you are someone who's a leader and you seek leadership and empathic leadership, it's the Emotional Alchemy Academy. And it's essentially an annual or seasonal experience where I have pillars based in emotional intelligence, where we're really going deeper in our leadership. So it's no longer just about how do I process my own emotions, but how do I show up as a leader responsibly, but in my vulnerability? How do I deepen my ability to hold space for other people, right? So it's a leadership space where we deepen emotional alchemy. And the other piece is working one-on-one with me. And right now, what I'm actually really focusing on is supporting women who have kind of been stuck, overwhelmed with either symptoms of trauma or emotional overwhelm. And I have a very grounded practice, which is based in mindful compassion, boundary work, etc. And so I take them on a journey. It's called Breathe with Boundaries. So that's another way to work with me. But if people just want to connect, Instagram is really the best place to connect with me.
Amazing. So we'll make sure we put that in the show notes so that they can start following you. And if something aligns to work with you in any capacity or just to be in your world, which is, I think, I'm excited about being a part of. So amazing. I like to end every little session here with just a nugget of a phrase, a saying, a word, or something to leave my people with. What is on your heart today to leave
Yeah,
them?
what I want to say is that your vulnerability is your gift to community.
I love that. And you for sure have been vulnerable in this process. So thank you for that. Be sure to connect with Sabrina, you guys. Follow her, give her a like, give her all the things. And if you feel called, definitely reach out to her and connect directly. So thanks for being here, Sabrina. Thanks for sharing in the space of alchemy with me. And until next time, guys, go light the world on fire. Thanks for tuning in to the Alchemy Experience. If this episode lit something up inside you, go ahead and share it with someone who's ready to rise too. Be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and connect with me online on all social media at the Alchemy Experience. Because transformation loves company, and together we all rise. And hey, don't just survive this week. Thrive like you frickin' mean it. Let's go let it up. Talk soon.